Hey everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Rowing Chat, the rowing podcast. Today I am joined by Adrian Cassidy. Adrian, welcome.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Good afternoon.
So would you like to introduce yourself and give the listeners a little bit of a background about you in the sport of rowing and what you're doing today?
As Rebecca said, my name's Adrian Cassidy. I learned to row at school in England, and then I rowed at university in London and went on to do some international rowing. And then after my career finished, I went on to do some international coaching for the British team and the Irish team. And then for the last 3 years, I'm not doing any more coaching, and I've been building this website called Rowe.rs with a couple of colleagues, trying to make it easier for coaches to manage their clubs and manage all the data that's being produced.
So just to give a bit of clarity, can you spell out the URL for Rowe.rs?
So we call it Rowe.rs, but it's ROWE.RS.
Very smart.
Yeah.
Which country?
Hosted in Republic of Serbia.
Nice. Yeah. I noticed the other day that a lot of AI, artificial intelligence websites are coming up, and that's Anguilla in the Caribbean. So
really, right.
Adrian, tell me what gave you the idea, the inspiration for setting
Well,
up?
I suppose when I was coaching, there was so many spreadsheets I was using and having to get data from all sorts of places and taking a lot of time. So me and a couple of colleagues, when I finished coaching, just thought we'd play around a bit and try and see if we could solve the problem. And started off just basically doing it on our own. Then we employed one person to do some coding, and then we realized actually there might be a market, and actually, as a consequence, we've grown a business out of it, which is quite exciting for us. And we've learned a lot about we're doing it. And we only just recently, we had a product going for about a year, and the last 8 months we've been redesigning it. And actually on Monday we released a new version, so it's all live and ready for people to use, really. So it's great.
Talk us through what's the main thing that rowers can do for a club coach?
The basic thing is we think people aren't that sophisticated with data yet in rowing. So basically, as a basic tool, it helps you organize your club. So you can put up the training program, you can communicate the training program to all your athletes and coaches, you can send messages, you can post videos, you can all that kind of stuff, do attendance. And then if you want to, you can start adding in the ergo data, you can upload heart rate and GPS, you can do more sophisticated stuff, and you can inform everybody what crews are rowing in the next day. So it makes the communication, so you don't have to use WhatsApp and Google and Facebook and all sorts of different platforms, trying to bring it all into one place.
So at the moment, it focuses on the organization side, and then the other bit is the data capture. Does it also help with data analysis?
It does a little bit. It doesn't do a lot of it yet. I mean, I think a lot of people might look at some of it and see what we do as analysis, but actually we still think it's just summary. Mm-hmm. And I think the next stage is once we've finished with version 2, we're going to start importing more data sources like GPS, like telemetry from there's like going to be 7 different telemetry devices in the next 12 months. That's going to generate a lot of data. So we're going to make sure that all that data will come into us, and we're working with those different manufacturers to do that.
Fantastic. So that's an external API that you're working with?
Yeah, exactly. So some of these companies didn't have APIs originally. They're now building them, and then it will make it easy to work with.
And an API, just to be clear, is a protocol that allows data to be taken from one thing, for example, a Garmin watch, directly into the Rowe.rs system almost without the user having to do anything other than say, send it to Rowe.rs.
Yeah, exactly. If you have an account on 2 different platforms, you just connect the 2 accounts with your usernames, and actually the data is passed from cloud to cloud. It doesn't even go through your phone. It doesn't take any data either. So, and it's much quicker. Yeah, that's basically it.
Adrian, I'd love to have a look inside Rowe.rs. Could you do that for us?
I'll share my screen. Here we go. Is that working?
Yes.
Okay, great. So here's basically the look of the calendar. So this is a demo club with some fictitious data. And you can see that all the different sessions are here. So if I hover over a session, I can see that it's how many people are in the session. I can see that because the circle and the heart are both dark, it means that they've got heart rate and GPS has been uploaded. If I go here, they're gray, nothing's been uploaded. And if I click into one of those sessions, you start to see the layout of what a session looks like. And here you can straight away see a bit of a summary at the top. what training zone you're working in, work structure. So there's 3 2Ks, 2 2Ks down here. See who's in the session, all the names, and you can also see the wall here and some communication. You can upload video and make comments and all that kind of stuff. Then also, if you go on the crews tab, you're able to see all the crews in the session and who's in which crew. And it's easy drag and drop. You can just swap people between crews.
And cleverly coloured red and green for bow side and stroke side.
Yeah, exactly. And if people, so I've just, so basically if people can make sure the bow side strokes are all sculling. And if those people then import their heart rate and GPS, this takes you to the results page. And you can see here, these are all the athletes on the session, and they've all imported their heart rate. And you can see how much time each person has spent in each training zone for that one session.
That one guy on the right, he doesn't look so good.
No, they haven't worked very hard, exactly. So then you can have a proper conversation with them, and that's kind of the idea. Is it doesn't solve or make you necessarily go faster, but it means you can ask better questions. And then below that's the data. You can see how much time everybody spent in each training zone, the average heart rate, and also the total distance they rode, and the time they rode. We can start to accumulate your actual training volume. And the thing we found is quite interesting is that when people start to do this, actually people are often 1 or 1.5 kilometers out on the programmed mileage. Plus or minus.
Plus or minus.
Or both. Both. So actually it means that people think they're doing 16K or whatever, but they're not. And so over a period of a couple of months, you could be quite a long way out on the distance. But people don't, I mean, some people are recording it, but it's not so easy for even the coaches to see, because usually people have the data themselves, but nobody else can see it.
So each athlete gets given a heart rate strap.
Yeah.
And does that come with a wristwatch, or do they just need to wear the strap?
No, you have to. Basically, we don't provide any the way of collecting the data. You need to have a Polar or a Garmin or a Sunto account. So basically, you're talking about those integrations. If you go into the settings panel of the software, here are the integrations, and you can connect any of those. If you have a Garmin, Polar, or Sunto watch, or the Float app, which is an app which connects to the rowing machine to stream all your data off the ergo, gives you stroke length and everything for every single stroke. You just connect to those devices, and suddenly the data that those devices create comes across. So the scenario would be you put your belt on, you go rowing with your watch. At the end of the session, you come in, you'll sync the watch with your phone, and that pushes the data to the cloud. If you have an expensive watch, they go directly to the cloud, but most watches you have to go through the app.
So you're showing us the coach's view. So the coach sees everybody's results. What do the athletes see?
So this is an athlete within the same club. So the athlete, if we go to the same session we just spoke about as an athlete, I see the same thing really. See all the coaches. If I go to results, I see there's the time pieces that the coaches took, the gold medal times for each of the pieces. And then if I go to the heart rate tab, the same place as the other one, again, I see all the data, the same thing. So
I really can see whether my crewmates.
Yeah, exactly. And here's a line as well where I can, you basically, it means that you actually get an insight on how your crewmates are doing. You also see how you're doing compared to the group, and it starts to educate people, because there's suddenly the reality of what's actually going on becomes visible. Because a lot of people, if they use a heart rate monitor, it might be half the crew use it. You don't know what each other's doing. So here's an example, everybody's heart rate stuff overlaid. And we've just built a feature where you can overlay it by GPS time. That means no matter when anybody switched their watch on, we're aligning every single sort of trace. So if you're in a crew, all 4 of you would be overlaid exactly the same to see when you were working hard and when you weren't.
Very smart.
And we do, and it does every session type. So if you go back to the calendar, we have water sessions, ergo sessions, bike, running, swimming, weight training, and even days off.
So take us into the detail of, imagine I'm a coach and I'm writing a training program for the next month. How do I do that?
The first thing you do, you would drag in, let's say, an ergo session, and that has nobody on it. So then press the edit button. Starts off with the date of the session, the time, and again I can change that quite easily. You put in either the total distance or the time. So if I say it's going to be a 16-kilometer ergo session, I can change the name and call it 16-kilometer ergo. Then I can decide who's going to attend it. So I either have my squad, so I can just put the women on this session, for instance. Then as coaches, I can assign other coaches to the session, like all the women's coaches, for instance. And then on top of that, let's say I want to do pieces in there. So I can choose pieces. So I can say I want to do one 20-minute piece. So just type that in there. And if I want to take splits every 5 minutes, and then I would update the session. And there you go, so that's all saved. And then if we go into the ergo session here, if I open it up, just created a session here. These are all the people that have been assigned to it. And because of what I did, if I press add scores, I now have an ability to add all the data.
Or the athlete can upload their own data through the Flow app.
Exactly. So if they do that, they can go import, then they can float, they can choose session. I haven't connected it recently, so mine's not working. But or they can import their Garmin data as well. Wow. And upload that.
And because it's all time stamped, it's very easy for the athlete to select the correct record.
Exactly. Because you get the drop down, and this is the detail that Garmin will give you, and then you can choose whichever session is relevant to today. But you obviously can see from there I haven't trained for a while. But one of the things that's interesting on an ergo session is that at the moment we would write down, like the 16K ergo would be one 20-minute piece. People would say one 20-minute piece, and that's all they would record. And if you record that on the ergo, you'd record a 20-minute piece with all your heart rate, and that would be it. But actually, you've done a warm-up, and you've done a wind down. So actually the training session is probably near an hour. And if you just record the data the ergo gives you, you're only gonna have 20 minutes worth of data. So we feel like you can upload the float data, which has got really ergo specific data. There's how long you rode for every stroke, you know, what your pacing was like, all that kind of stuff. But if you were to wear a Garmin and upload that from the beginning to the end of the session, you would actually get the overall heart rate profile for the warm up, the session, and the wind down. And then you're starting to record actually how much training you've done.
That's fantastic.
And I don't think in rowing we're thinking like that very much at the moment. We just do the erg and get off.
Very, very true. So from the point of view of somebody who is possibly looking to try out rowers, obviously there's a certain amount of setting up. You've got to put in all your athletes' names and the names of the coaches we've seen and so on. But there's a lot, I'm guessing, that you have pre-set up on the assumption that the vast majority of training programs run a very similar structure.
Well, we haven't gone about doing any sort of template stuff at the moment, actually. It's something we're going to think about. But we kind of don't want to be telling people how to train, because I think it's hard to know what people should be doing depending on their training age, their ability, their health state. So we really are just trying to produce something that makes it easy. So in the beginning, the coach would join up on the website. They would invite all the athletes to join the club. They would break them into squads. So I'll go back to the coaches page. They would break the club into squads. So here we have, you know, Rowe.rs Alpha, so that's the demo club. These are all the athletes that are in that squad. And then there's different squads. So you can have a squad for the coaches, a squad for the men. And that means that with the wall here, if I go to the coaches wall, there's no athletes on this wall. If I type something here, only the coaches get this message. So it's an internal communication system, basically. And you can have as many squads as you want. So you can have one for the 8 for the summer, or you can have, you know, for a group that are going on a training camp, all that kind of stuff. The communication becomes easy, and you can upload documents or videos, or so that's obviously got nothing to do with performance. But being organized, everybody knowing what they're doing, and everybody turning up to training is a really basic step towards training properly.
Yes.
And you know, one of the biggest predictors of success in your sport, in our sport, is people who do the program.
Yes.
I think the research was people who complete over 93% of the program got a very high chance of performing. But just attending, doing what you're told, and doing it properly, no bells and whistles really, are there?
Yeah, and from reassuringly, from the point of view of the coach doesn't need to be changing the way he's writing or she is writing the training program or organizing the squad. It's just about starting with base communication and then adding a layer on top of that of recording what people actually did on the sessions.
Yeah, exactly. And at a very basic level, there's nobody on this session, but at a basic level, you can do attendance as well. So who turned up, who didn't turn up. So at schools and that kind of stuff, you then start to keep a record of people, and people say, well, how come my little Johnny didn't get in the crew? And you can say, well, he turned up to 80% of the training sessions.
Yes,
reward the right kind of behavior in your club.
Yeah. Adrian, that's fantastic. So if someone wanted to get started, do you think that the analysis is relatively straightforward? Do they need to, for example, have preset and checked people's heart rate training zones?
So, well, what they can do, if I go back to the squads again, is that when you look at the individual athletes, again, it depends how sophisticated you want to be. If you know what you're doing, you click on one of these, you take it to an athlete's profile page. Here's a place where you can, when it loads finally, you can set their heart rate zones.
So you can start with a default setting, assuming.
Yeah, and it's the same default settings you get on a Garmin or a Polar account. 220 minus your age, and then we set it by percentages for the zones.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you've made it easy to start, and then, of course, as you say, you can layer sophistication on top of that. Once they've done a heart rate zone test, or a step test or whatever you choose, then you can adapt that, I'm guessing, for each individual athlete.
Yeah, exactly. You can so if you do testing every 4 or 6 weeks, you can change their heart rate zones, and that means everything they import after that changes what they're doing.
And so the bar charts you showed us at the beginning were showing how long each athlete was training in that zone, and of course those zones were unique to the athletes, so it's a fair comparison.
It is. And that's the thing, is that at a basic level, you may write a training program to do X, but then you have 10 people who do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So they don't actually do the program you write, especially in the beginning. They may as time goes on, but not in the beginning.
Which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun.
And what do you think is going to happen next for data in rowing?
I think it's going to be interesting, all these strain gauges coming out and these power meters, either on the gate, like the NK one, or on the oar. There's a Dutch company, there's a British company, there's Weber, there's quite a few companies, and I think there's going to be 7, maybe 8 devices out there to measure power. And I think people feel it's going to be the be all and end all of sport, like cycling has had power. I'm not sure it's going to be that straightforward, but I think we need to record all the data first, and people start to figure out what it really means. So we don't know yet.
Certainly, I've noticed in recent years that more people are using watts as a measure for erg work. And obviously, a power gauge will enable you then to use watts for boat work as well. And presumably, it's a direct comparison because the measure is the same.
And ironically, I think it will be far from that. I think every single device will give you a different wattage. The 200 watts on the ergo might be 200, 300, 400 on different devices. They're not going to be comparable.
We had a question this week privately from British Rowing, who are switching an athlete from training on the Row Perfect Classic to the RP3 machine. Okay. And they were most concerned to know that the watts was comparable to the Concept 2, which it is. Yeah. But of course, there are fewer moving parts in a rowing machine in a gym than there are a boat on the water. And so it's a much easier job of work to say, yes, this data is comparable.
Yeah, and also calibration. And I think also the ergo, the Concept 2, over time, as they get dirty, it'd be interesting how much this calibration changes in that. I don't think anybody really knows.
Yes, exactly. And who would have the means to measure it? We don't all train in an engineering lab.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it'll be a valuable tool because you'll be able to compare day to day and see if you're having a good day or a bad day, like the ergo. As long as people don't take it as gospel, what they're producing is what makes the bird go fast.
I read some stuff from Rowing Australia recently saying that even the very, very most skillful athletes on the water manage to get between 60 and 70% of the watts that they can generate on the erg.
Is that what it is?
That's what they said.
Yeah.
I have no reason to disbelieve them.
Exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about clubs who'd like to try out rowers. What can they do?
They just go onto the website, to be honest. And then at the moment, the next week, we've released a new version. It's just open to our current members, just to make sure we're debugging it fully. And then the week after, it will go live to everybody. So if they go on the website, they can just press sign up. After they go, they get 14 days free trial. And they can ask us questions. We've had recently crews sign up without even speaking to us and writing sessions all the way till Christmas and just getting on with it.
Great.
So it's become much more intuitive to use since we've redesigned it. And then in 2 weeks after that, so maybe last week in November, first week in December, we're releasing both our Android and our iOS app.
And what will the app do?
The app will show them their training session. They can see all the training detail, and they can enter all the data manually on the phone, like all the ergo sessions, that kind of stuff. And also we'll be able to do that all import. So if they sync it with their Garmin, on the phone, they'll be able to do the syncing of the data across.
And does the app then alert you if there's a message on the wall and things like that?
Yeah, there's notifications that come up on the app as well, so you know if people are sending you a message. So it reduces, and we found that teenage kids, they don't read email anymore. So if you haven't got an app, you're nowhere. So we've had to do that over the summer.
That's fabulous. Anything else you think that I should know?
No, not really. I think no, not really. I think it's going to be interesting, our sport, because more and more data is going to be generated, and find a way of not increasing the burden on the coaches, because they already work too many hours and spend so much time entering data, and then as a consequence, not spending enough time looking at it.
Fantastic. Adrian, thank you. It's been a great insight. Really nice to see what it looks like with real athletes and a real training program.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye.